All right, so today we're looking at RoleCatcher,
Oh,
right? And, they've got all this stuff on different careers. And it's like, who knew this could be so interesting? Laundry ironers. Like, ever think about the people who make those hotel sheets so perfect, crisp? Or how about when you get a new shirt and it's just like perfectly pressed?
it's funny, right? You don't really think about it. You just assume it happens.
Exactly. But there's a whole world behind it. And RoleCatcher, they're calling these folks laundry ironers, which, I mean, makes sense, but it's like, what does that actually involve day to day?
Right. Like, is it just, pushing an iron around all day? And actually, they get into it like they say it's not just ironing, it's reshaping clothing items and linen.
Reshaping. Okay, now that's got my attention. What's the difference between ironing and reshaping when it comes to like clothes?
So think about it. You've got something like a linen shirt, right? Totally different than, say, a silk blouse. Each fabric, it's going to react differently to heat, to pressure.
Mm.
A good laundry ironer, they understand all that. They know how to use the iron to get those wrinkles out, but also how to make sure the garment, looks like it's supposed to, the shake, everything.
So there's a real art to it. It's not just like plug it in and go. It makes you think twice the next time you see a perfect crease on a pair of pants or something.
For sure. And it's not just the ironing itself either. RoleCatcher, they talk about all the equipment, the cleaning, the maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
They even call it maintaining a whole ironing ecosystem.
Ironing ecosystem. Okay, that's a new one. So where are these ironing ecosystems usually found? I mean, like what kind of places do laundry ironers work?
They mentioned a bunch of places, actually, laundromats, obviously, but also hotels, some retail stores, even like those big industrial laundries that handle like uniforms and stuff.
Hmm. Gotcha, gotcha. So we're not talking about some quiet little corner and dry cleaners necessarily. This could be a pretty hectic environment.
It can be, yeah. RoleCatcher, they emphasize that it can be fast-paced, pretty warm, sometimes noisy, what with the industrial irons and steamers going.
Yeah, those industrial things are no joke.
Yeah.
So we're talking physical stamina on top of the technical skills here.
Definitely. RoleCatcher mentioned standing for long periods, lifting laundry baskets and bags. It's not for everyone, that's for sure.
Okay, so not your typical desk job then. You got to be able to handle yourself. So if someone's thinking, hey, maybe laundry ironers for me, what kind of personality are we talking about here? What would make someone successful in this kind of role?
Well, RoleCatcher, they say flexibility is a big one because the hours can be all over the place, evenings, weekends, depends on the place. But honestly, I think it takes someone who like genuinely cares about fabrics, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Someone who gets a little thrill out of seeing something go from wrinkled to wonderful.
I like that. Wrinkled to wonderful. Almost like a magician, but with wrinkles instead of like rabbits.
You mentioned the hours being flexible. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, do you think?
I guess it depends, right? Some folks, they need that regular 9 to 5, the structure, but others, they thrive on a little variety, being their own boss, setting their own pace. And that's something RoleCatcher highlights the potential for advancement in this field.
Advancement. Now, hold on. I got to ask, what does moving up even look like for a laundry ironer?
Right, like, is there some kind of ironing master level you unlock? But actually, it's pretty cool what they're saying.
Okay, so spill the tea. What kind of career paths are we talking about here?
Well, for starters, you could go the management route. Become a supervisor, maybe even manage a whole team of laundry ironers.
All right, working your way up the ironing ladder. I can see it. What else?
Get this. They even mentioned starting your own business. You could be running the show, your own dry cleaning service, laundry service, you name it. Imagine that the crease-free king or queen of your own domain. Okay, now that's a title I can get behind. Crease-free king.
Yeah.
Put it on my business card. But seriously, who knew ironing could be such a diverse field?
Right. And it's not just about the traditional stuff either. RoleCatcher, they even get into how technology is changing the game.
Wait, hold up. Technology and ironing, I gotta hear this. What are we talking about? Robot ironers taking over the world?
Not quite robots yet, at least.
Mm.
But those trusty old irons, they're getting some serious upgrades. They mention newfangled irons, presses, steamers, all designed for like maximum efficiency.
Okay, so it's less about elbow grease and more about high-tech equipment now. How does that change things for a laundry ironer?
Right. That's the million-dollar question. It seems like the field is evolving, and I'm really curious to dig into that more. Like they specifically mentioned software and apps for managing orders and tasks.
Wait, you're telling me there's an app for ironing now?
Apparently. And this is where it gets really interesting. Like, imagine you're a laundry ironer, right? But instead of those like, paper slips with orders on them, it's all on a tablet. You see what's next? The fabric, special care instructions, even when it's due, all right there.
Okay, that's pretty slick. No more trying to decipher someone's bad handwriting, huh? But seriously, learning a whole new software program, that's a skill in itself.
Definitely. And RoleCatcher, they're saying this is becoming more common. Like, it's not just high-end places either. It's industrial laundromats, even your local dry cleaners.
Wow. So tech skills is actually something you might need as a laundry ironer these days, huh? RoleCatcher was talking about technology changing things. Anything else in that vein that really stood out?
Oh, yeah, for sure. One thing they highlighted was like the eco-friendly aspect. Like they're developing these new irons, presses, all that, and they're designed to use way less energy, less water too.
Makes sense. Sustainability is such a big deal now, even with ironing, I guess. Knowing how to run those machines, that's got to be a plus for anyone looking to get into the field. So it's not just can you iron, it's can you iron responsibly.
Exactly. It adds a whole nother layer to it, for sure. That reminds me, RoleCatcher had a whole section on interview questions for laundry ironers, right? And some of these, they're not what you'd expect. It's not just like, can you iron a shirt?
Oh, really? Like what? Give me an example. What kind of curveballs are we talking about here?
Well, one that jumped out at me was, how do you handle delicate fabrics? Like, they're really trying to get at that specialized knowledge.
Oh, absolutely. You wouldn't want someone used to ironing like cotton sheets to suddenly be let loose on a silk scarf or something. What else did they ask?
Can you describe a time you had to handle a difficult ironing task? So apparently, even the pros run into those stubborn wrinkles sometimes.
Oh, tell me about it. I've definitely had those moments wrestling with a fitted sheet, like, why won't you just cooperate? It'd be fascinating to hear what those ironing dilemmas are for the experts.
Right. Because they have all kinds of tricks up their sleeves. But it does highlight something RoleCatcher kept emphasizing, that this job, it's not just about knowing fabrics. It's about, like, stamina, being able to handle a fast-paced environment. Sometimes things get intense.
Yeah, totally. We talked about the physical demands, but what about the personality side of things? Like, what kind of person really thrives as a laundry ironer? What are we talking about there?
Based on what RoleCatcher's saying, I'm picturing someone who really enjoys the process, like
Yeah,
taking something wrinkled, lifeless, and bringing it back to life. It's detail-oriented, sure, but there's also that satisfaction of a job well done, right?
totally. Like solving a wrinkle puzzle every day, making things perfect, and hey, maybe even using an app to keep track of it all. Definitely not how I used to picture ironing, that's for sure. But let's be real, it's not going to be for everyone, right? What would you say are the toughest parts of this job? The things that might make someone reconsider?
Well, like we said, the physical aspect is huge. Being on your feet all day, those repetitive motions, and the heat, especially in those industrial settings. And as much as technology is helping, there's always the risk of repetitive strain injuries, carpal tunnel, things like that, if you're not careful.
It's easy to forget about those things when you're focused on the end result, that perfect garment. And RoleCatcher mentioned the fast-paced nature of it all. How does that play out in a typical day?
Well, it depends, right? A huge laundry facility is different from a small shop.
Hmm.
But a lot of times there are quotas to meet, deadlines, that kind of pressure. So it's not always like zen ironing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. No time to stop and smell the starch when there's a mountain of laundry waiting. Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, but are there any, like, unexpected perks to this job? Things that might surprise people who are considering it?
RoleCatcher said something interesting, and it's not what you'd think.
Hmm.
They highlighted the creative side of it, like especially if you're working with, say, high-end garments, unusual fabrics, there's a real art to it. Getting the drape just right, that perfect crease.
Like, you're not just ironing, you're sculpting, right?
Using fabric as your medium. Now, that's pretty cool. They mentioned specializing, too. Any examples of what that could look like?
Oh, yeah. They talked about folks who specialize in restoring vintage textiles.
Like, imagine having the skill to take a delicate lace dress, maybe 100 years old, and bringing it back to life. That takes serious knowledge, not just of ironing, but of preservation, history.
Wow. So you're like a textile historian and a laundry ironer all rolled into one. That's amazing. It's like you find this hidden world within a world, right? You wouldn't think there'd be so much to it. But there's one more thing I wanted to touch on from the RoleCatcher stuff. They mentioned customer interaction, and I'm like, wait a minute, really? I always pictured this job as being totally behind the scenes.
Yeah, you just kind of figure they're back there in the steam, doing their thing, no talking involved.
Exactly. But it's not always the case.
It's not. Like, think about your local dry cleaner, the fancy ones at least, or maybe a hotel that does pressing services. The laundry ironer, they might be the ones taking your clothes, talking about stains, all that.
Oh, interesting. So you're not just dealing with fabrics, you're dealing with people, too.
And not just any people.
Yeah.
RoleCatcher made a point of saying this is where those people skills come in. Because imagine, someone's bringing you their great-grandmother's wedding dress, or a vintage concert tee, something irreplaceable. They got to trust you.
That adds a whole other level to it, right? It's not enough to just know how to iron. You got to be able to, like, reassure them, understand what it means to them.
Exactly. RoleCatcher actually had a whole bit about that, how important it is to be able to communicate, especially when it's something delicate or really valuable.
So you're like a textile therapist now, too. You're handling their precious garments and their anxieties.
Pretty much. It takes a certain kind of person, someone patient, who can explain things clearly, make people feel comfortable.
This has been so eye-opening. I mean, honestly, who knew there was so much to say about ironing?
Right. It's like one of those things you take it for granted until someone points out all the work, the skill, even the technology behind it.
It's true. I don't think I'll ever look at a crisp shirt the same way again.
Hopefully you won't look at your ironing board the same way either.
Huh. That's a challenge for another day. But seriously, this has been fantastic. Thanks for ironing out all the details with me, so to speak.
You got it. Always happy to geek out about unconventional career paths.
And for anyone listening who's suddenly feeling inspired to maybe give ironing a shot or even just learn more, be sure to check out RoleCatcher. They've got tons of info on this and a whole bunch of other unexpected careers. Until next time, happy ironing, everyone.